My name is Sarah Mitchell, 29, a software engineer who's been covering my parents' medical bills for the past 4 years. They were throwing a huge celebration for my dad's retirement at their country club. I wasn't on the guest list. Mom had texted saying it was because they wanted to keep it small, just close family. I told myself it was fine, that I was probably working that weekend anyway. But when I scrolled through Instagram that Saturday night, the truth shattered into 1,000 pieces. My brother Derek had posted a video. Everyone dancing under string lights on the club's terrace, glasses of champagne catching the golden hour sun. The caption said, "Celebrating with the people who matter most. Family first, always." I watched it 3 times, the words cutting deeper each loop. Then I opened the comments and typed, "Congrats. Your insurance premiums and prescription costs are all yours now." I hit post before my rational mind could stop me. Within 7 minutes, the video disappeared. Within 15, 43 missed calls lit up my screen like a Christmas tree. I didn't answer a single one. I just sat there in my Denver studio apartment, the blue glow from my phone painting shadows on the walls, understanding that maybe I'd been uninvited from this family long before the party was ever planned. They didn't forget me, they erased me. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, stay with me. What happened next will change how you see loyalty, love, and the price of self-respect. And when this story ends, drop a comment telling me, would you have done the same thing? Hit subscribe if you're ready for stories that tell the truth about family dynamics most people are too afraid to share. It had always been this way. Derek was the golden child, and I was the backup plan that became permanent. When we were kids, he could bring home a C- and Dad would pat his back saying, "You'll get it next time, champ." I once brought home straight A's and a scholarship letter, and Mom folded it into her purse saying we'd talk about it later. We never did. Even as a child, I learned that Derek's mediocrity deserved celebration while my excellence was simply expected, barely worth mentioning. The pattern calcified as we grew older. When the basement flooded, I was the one who sent money from my internship savings. When Mom needed surgery, I maxed out my first credit card to cover the copays. Each time crisis knocked, my phone would ring, not for comfort or conversation, but for a wire transfer. I told myself I was doing it because it was right, because families help each other. But somewhere deep down, I hoped they'd finally see me, really see me. They never did. Derek's life fell apart in slow motion while mine was just beginning to take shape. He dropped out of college twice, bounced between jobs, moved back home with a duffel bag and excuses. Mom welcomed him like a returning soldier. I remember her telling a neighbor, "Derek's figuring things out, poor thing, it's hard out there." When I visited that month, I offered to help him with his resume. He said he didn't need my help. That night, I overheard Dad telling Mom that I didn't understand what real struggle looked like. I wanted to scream. Paying off their bills while living on ramen wasn't struggle enough, apparently. Living 3 states away gave me physical distance, but it became proof of my supposed abandonment. Every time I missed a family dinner because of project deadlines, Mom would sigh dramatically and tell relatives, "Sarah's too busy for us now." I worked 70-hour weeks, earned every promotion, yet in their eyes, I was the daughter who chose her career over family. The truth was simpler and more painful. Being near them hurt. The closer I got, the more I disappeared. Dad, Michael, was a passive man. He rarely contradicted Mom. When she criticized me, he'd mumble, "You know how your mother gets," as if that excused the pattern. Once, after a particularly tense Thanksgiving, I asked him why he never defended me. He stared at his coffee and said, "Keeping the peace is easier than being right." I realized then that his silence was loyalty to her comfort, not to me. The years blurred together, marked by phone calls that always started with, "How are you?" and ended with, "We need help with. Can you cover the car payment? Derek needs a little help with rent. Your mom's medications went up again." I gave and gave, not because I was generous, but because I couldn't stomach the guilt of saying no. It took me years to notice the pattern. They only called when something was broken. When life was smooth, I ceased to exist entirely. Sometimes late at night, I'd scroll through family photos on Facebook. Derek's arm always around Mom, Dad always standing beside them, and me, just at the edge of the frame, smiling but half-cropped, like an afterthought the photographer forgot to center. It wasn't malicious, I told myself. Just habit. I had become the background, the reliable one, the invisible one. People say family love is unconditional. Mine came with terms, conditions, and payment plans. I was the safety net beneath their lives, stretched thin and fraying, but never acknowledged. For years, I convinced myself that love meant sacrifice. Only now, I'm starting to wonder if it was just convenience for them. If this resonates with you, hit that subscribe button. These stories don't get told enough, and you deserve to know you're not alone. 10 days before the party, Mom called. Her voice had that syrupy sweetness she used when she needed something or was about to deliver bad news. She asked how work was going, said she hoped I wasn't too stressed, then casually mentioned they were finalizing the guest list for Dad's retirement party. The venue had limited capacity, she explained, and with Dad's golf buddies and Mom's book club friends confirming, space had become tight. She hoped I'd understand that it wasn't personal, that they loved me so much. I sat at my desk, half listening, half distracted by code compiling on my screen. The words didn't register as pain at first, they just hung there, waiting for my brain to catch up. I told her it was fine, that Dad deserved a great night. She sounded relieved, almost cheerful, when she said goodbye. 2 hours later, a text from Derek appeared. "Don't take it personally," followed by a thumbs-up emoji. I stared at it until my screen dimmed. Derek had a talent for making condescension sound like comfort. The message wasn't reassurance. It was confirmation that I'd been cut out, and he knew it, and he approved. I typed 4 different replies and deleted them all before leaving it on read. That evening at the office, my colleague Jasmine noticed I was quieter than usual. She was the type who never pried but always noticed. We'd shared the same floor for 3 years, and she'd learned to read my silence. She asked if I wanted to grab dinner before heading home. I agreed, mostly to avoid going back to my empty apartment and overthinking. At the Thai place on 15th, she waited until I was ready to talk. I told her about the call, about the limited capacity, about Derek's text. Jasmine pushed her pad thai around her plate slowly, her expression calm but knowing. "They only love the version of you that solves problems," she said finally. The sentence landed like a stone in still water. I almost laughed because it sounded harsh, but it was undeniably true. Jasmine wasn't being cruel. She was naming what I'd refused to see. I told her how I'd been covering their medical bills, how they only called when they needed money. She nodded like she'd already guessed. "Then stop solving everything," she said. I wanted to tell her it wasn't that simple, that families don't just disconnect cleanly. But the truth was, I didn't know how to stop. When we left the restaurant, the night air felt colder than it should have. The streetlights reflected off wet pavement, and I imagined Mom and Derek sitting somewhere warm, deciding who deserved a seat at the table. I wondered if there had ever been a time when my presence felt necessary instead of optional. That night, I went online and ordered them a gift. Nothing extravagant, just a custom photo book titled 40 Years of Memories. I filled it with old family photos, vacations, birthdays, milestones. I wrote a note on the first page that said, "Congratulations, Dad. Here's to the next chapter." I paid for express shipping and went to bed feeling like maybe this small gesture would remind them I still cared. 4 days later, a package arrived at my door. My handwriting was on the return label. Inside was the photo book, unopened, with a sticky note in Mom's handwriting that said, "We don't have room for more clutter." I stood in my hallway holding it, not sure whether to laugh or cry. The words were polite, but the message was brutal. My effort was unwanted, just like my presence at their celebration. That evening, Derek called, his voice falsely bright. "Hey, Mom didn't mean anything by it. She's just stressed with the party planning. You know how she gets." I told him I wasn't upset, though my throat felt tight. Before hanging up, he added, "You really gotta stop being so sensitive." I knew exactly how Mom got. What hurt more was that Derek always defended her, even when he knew she was wrong. After the call, I sat by the window watching the city lights blink on one by one. My reflection in the glass looked tired, older. I thought about what Jasmine said, that they only loved the version of me that paid and obeyed and stayed quiet. For the first time, I let myself ask the question I'd been avoiding. Was love built on obligation really love at all? I didn't cry. I just felt a strange, hollow calm, the kind that settles in after you stop expecting things to change. I turned off my phone and went to bed early, deciding there was nothing left to say. The party would happen, I wouldn't be there, and what surprised me most was how little that fact hurt anymore. Make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next is where everything changes. Saturday evening, my feed became a crime scene. I'd just finished meal prepping for the week, trying to distract myself from the knowledge that the retirement party was happening right now, 40 minutes across town. I wasn't expecting to see it. The moment I opened Instagram, there it was. Derek's post pinned at the top of my feed, like it had been waiting specifically for me. The video loaded slowly, buffering, before revealing everyone gathered on the terrace at sunset. They wore matching navy blue outfits like some coordinated family photoshoot, laughing as if the moment were staged for a greeting card. In the center stood Dad, holding Mom's hand, surrounded by relatives, neighbors, even people I barely recognized. The camera panned across their faces, everyone beaming, everyone included. The caption read, "Celebrating with the people who matter most. Family first, always." My finger hovered over the screen. For a second, I thought it might be a mistake, that Derek posted without thinking about how it would look. But then I scrolled to the comments. Mom's name was the first one. "So blessed," she'd written, with 3 heart emojis. Dozens of replies followed, friends praising how beautiful everyone looked, how lucky they were to have such a close family. Each comment was another reminder of my absence. I read the caption again and again, like repetition would change the meaning. It didn't. The matching outfits, the golden hour lighting, the curated smiles. This wasn't just a party, it was a performance. They weren't celebrating family, they were performing it for an audience, and I was the inconvenient truth edited out. My vision blurred slightly, but I refused to let the tears fall. Instead, I tapped the comment box and typed, "Congrats. Your insurance premiums and prescription costs are all yours now." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even mean. It was just true. For 4 years, I'd been the one making sure they had healthcare, paying copays, covering medications. That video wouldn't exist without those payments. None of their comfort would. I hit post and watched the words appear beneath Derek's perfect caption. Then I locked my phone and set it face down on the counter. 12 minutes passed before I picked it up again. The post was gone. My notifications were exploding. Calls, texts, messages, 43 in total and climbing. Mom's name appeared over and over. I didn't answer. I just sat there watching the phone light up and vibrate against the granite, feeling the weight of every buzz. When the calls finally stopped, a text came through from Mom. "How could you embarrass us like this? You're being selfish." I stared at the word selfish until it started to lose meaning. I'd been called many things, cold, distant, too ambitious, but selfish was new. My chest tightened, not from guilt, but from disbelief. After everything I'd done, every bill I'd covered, every crisis I'd solved, they still found a way to cast me as the villain. I walked to the window and looked out at the street below. The evening sky was fading from orange to deep purple. Somewhere across town, they were probably still celebrating, maybe even laughing about my comment. Derek defending his post, Mom recounting my audacity. Dad, of course, would say nothing at all. That part, at least, I could count on. I made tea just to have something to do with my hands. The kettle hissed, filling the small kitchen with steam. I thought about the past 4 years, about every time I logged into my bank account to send another payment, telling myself it was temporary, that eventually things would balance out. I never questioned why I was the only one helping. Good daughters did what was needed. I didn't ask for credit. I didn't even ask for acknowledgement. Standing there, it hit me all at once. I wasn't just excluded from their table. I'd been excluded from their gratitude years ago. They didn't see me as a person anymore, just a resource. And that post, that perfect video, was proof. They could erase me from the frame, but not from the bills that kept their lives intact. The phone rang again. I let it ring. I knew if I answered, Mom would speak first, her voice heavy with manufactured disappointment. She'd tell me that family doesn't air grievances online, that image mattered more than honesty. And she'd never see the irony that I'd been protecting that image for years while being excluded from it. Eventually, the call stopped. The apartment grew quiet again except for the hum of the refrigerator. I sat on the couch, tea cooling in my hand, and thought of Jasmine's voice at the restaurant. They only love the version of you that solves problems. It wasn't just observation, it was prophecy. I took one last look at my phone before powering it off completely. The screen faded to black. And for the first time that night, the quiet felt like relief. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the hurt, something shifted. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was clarity. I wasn't sure yet. All I knew was that I was done being the invisible sponsor of their curated life. If you're still watching, drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever been treated like this by your own family? You're not alone. And subscribe if you want to see how this ends, because what happens next is something they never saw coming. 3 weeks passed, and silence became expensive. I'd stopped sending the insurance payments the same week I decided to stop explaining myself. For 4 years, my account had auto-paid the same amount every month like clockwork, without acknowledgement or gratitude. The moment I stopped, the quiet that followed was heavier than I expected. The first week felt still. The second week began to hum with consequence. On Monday morning, my phone lit up with a text from Mom. The insurance company called. They said there's an issue with the payment. Is everything okay? It was written with fake confusion, hiding accusation beneath polite concern. I read it twice and didn't reply. A few hours later, another message arrived. We didn't want to bother you, but they say the policy will lapse if it's not paid soon. The word soon was her favorite manipulation tactic, urgency disguised as worry. I could practically hear the sigh between the lines. By Thursday, Derek joined in. His post appeared on Instagram, public for everyone to see. Some people forget where they come from, it said. Paired with a photo of him hugging Mom, the comments rolled in predictably. Stay strong. Family can be the hardest. Derek replied to each with sad face emojis, playing the role he'd perfected: devoted son, loyal brother, victim of someone else's ingratitude. I scrolled through once, closed the app, and tossed my phone onto the couch. I refused to give them the reaction they wanted, but ignoring them didn't stop reality from closing in. 5 days later, an envelope from the insurance company arrived in my mailbox. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I didn't live with them. My name shouldn't be on anything related to their coverage, except for the payments I chose to make. The envelope felt heavy, official. I tore it open and scanned the first page. My name was printed across the top in bold letters. Sarah Mitchell, policy guarantor and authorized payer. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. This wasn't just about missed payments. It was about a new policy, a plan I'd never seen before. The coverage had been upgraded 2 months earlier, expanded to include dental, vision, and prescription writers I'd never agreed to, and my name was listed as the financial guarantor for all of it. I read the page again, searching for an error, some clerical mistake, but every signature line, every authorization marker was mine. The next morning, I called the insurance company. After navigating through 4 automated menus, a polite voice introduced herself as Monica Torres, customer service supervisor. Miss Mitchell, she said, I see your inquiry about the policy. How can I help you today? I asked her to verify the details. She hesitated, then said, the upgrade was processed in late August. The primary policyholders are Michael and Linda Mitchell, with your electronic signature authorizing the guarantee and payment responsibility. My pulse quickened. I never signed anything, I said. Can you send me the documents? There was a pause. We have digital copies on file. The signature appears to match prior authorizations. It looks consistent. The word consistent felt like a punch. Someone had used my saved payment information, my digital footprint from years of autopay, to authorize something I'd never agreed to. I pressed further, asking for timestamps, IP addresses, details of how the signature was obtained. Monica's tone grew cautious. Legally, I can provide that through a formal records request. But if you're suggesting unauthorized use, we can open an internal investigation. The room felt smaller. I thanked her, wrote down her name and reference number, and ended the call. Then I sat motionless, staring at the policy documents spread across my kitchen table. My parents hadn't just depended on my help. They'd weaponized my trust, using the very access I'd given them as a tool for exploitation. The messages from Mom continued. Honey, we really need to talk. Then, you're being unreasonable. Finally, you're destroying this family. I didn't respond to any of them. Each message was evidence of how conditional their love had always been. It was never about care, only compliance. That night, I opened my email and started searching. There it was, buried in my spam folder from 2 months ago, an automated message labeled Policy Update Confirmation. I'd dismissed it as junk mail at the time. The attached PDF now told the full story. The form had been digitally signed using my email credentials and the saved payment authorization I'd set up years ago for convenience. I'd left that access open, trusting they wouldn't abuse it. That trust became their weapon. I printed every page, highlighted every date, every transaction code, every name. The stack grew thick, each sheet a piece of the betrayal I'd been too blind to see. When I reached the final document, my hands stopped shaking. There was no confusion left. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was calculated. The policy upgrade required 2 separate verifications, both cleared within 8 minutes of each other from the same IP address. Someone in that house knew exactly what they were doing. Later, as I sat by the window watching the Denver skyline fade into darkness, I realized how quiet betrayal sounds when it stops being emotional and starts becoming evidence. For years, I'd been their safety net. Now I was their liability, their insurance plan, their silent guarantor. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began drafting an email, not to my mother, not to Derek, but to Monica Torres. The subject line read, "Formal dispute of unauthorized guarantor agreement." My hands didn't shake anymore. My breathing steadied. Every word I typed was deliberate, measured, precise. I attached the evidence and requested an immediate freeze on all authorizations tied to my name. When I hit send, the silence returned. But this time, it didn't feel oppressive. It felt earned. I wasn't paralyzed anymore. They were. Stay subscribed because this is where the real consequences begin. By mid-November, the truth had teeth. The cold air outside matched the clarity that had settled inside me. I met with Rebecca Park, a consumer protection attorney known for handling family fraud cases. Her office was small but organized, shelves lined with binders labeled by year and case type. She read through my documents in silence, her expression unchanging until she reached the policy upgrade form. Then she looked up at me with sharp, knowing eyes. "Miss Mitchell," she said, "this is identity fraud. Using your saved credentials without consent to bind you financially to a contract you didn't agree to, that's a crime." Her words didn't shock me, but hearing them spoken aloud by someone who dealt in facts and law made something settle inside me. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was actionable. Rebecca explained the process carefully, how we'd file a formal complaint, freeze my authorizations, and potentially pursue civil and criminal charges depending on how my parents responded. I nodded through most of it, feeling oddly calm, like standing in the rain after realizing you can't get any wetter. When I left her office, the folder in my hand felt heavier than it should have, not from the paper, but from the weight of what came next. That afternoon, I received a follow-up email from Monica at the insurance company. Attached were detailed transaction logs, system access records, and IP address data, all pointing to activity from my parents' home address during the policy upgrade. "I hope this helps your case, Miss Mitchell," she wrote. "I'm sorry this happened to you." I thanked her, though no apology could undo the fact that my family had turned my trust into a trap. 4 days later, Derek's name lit up my phone. His message was brief. "Mom wants to meet for coffee. Just the 3 of us. Time to clear the air." I almost deleted it. But part of me wanted closure, not reconciliation, just an ending. I replied, "When and where?" Saturday morning, I arrived at the cafe 20 minutes early. The place smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon, a warmth that didn't match the tension coiling in my stomach. I chose a corner table, placed the folder beside my cup, and waited. A few minutes later, Derek walked in, followed by both parents. Mom wore a cream-colored sweater and her best sympathetic expression, as if appearance could rewrite reality. Dad's shoulders were hunched, his eyes fixed on the floor like always. Derek started with a smile too wide to be genuine. "Sarah, glad you came. Things got out of hand. Let's just talk it through." His tone was rehearsed, his charm defensive. Mom nodded, stirring sugar into her coffee with deliberate grace. "We all made mistakes," she said. "But we're family. We can move past this." I looked at her, then at the folder. "Move past it," I said quietly. "You used my name to upgrade your insurance without asking me." The words landed like stones on glass. Derek's smile froze. Mom's hand paused mid-stir. Dad didn't move at all. "That's not what happened," Derek said quickly, glancing at Mom. "You must have misunderstood something. Maybe the insurance company made an error." I opened the folder and slid a printed page across the table. My name sat above the digital signature, time-stamped and verified. The insurance company didn't do this, I said. You did. Mom's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her carefully constructed composure cracked at the edges. Dad's silence became louder than any confession. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. You want to talk about mistakes? I pressed play on a voicemail Mom had left weeks earlier. Her voice filled the quiet cafe, sharp and pleading. The insurance lapsed, Sarah. We need your help. You know we can't afford to lose coverage. You'll fix this, right? The color drained from her face. Derek's jaw tightened as if anger could erase proof. You didn't have to go this far, he said through clenched teeth. I met his gaze without flinching. You didn't have to steal from me. Mom finally whispered. We only did it to keep everything together, for the family. I gathered the papers back into the folder, then stood. Then keep it together without me. I placed a $10 bill on the table for my coffee. I've already filed to remove my name from the policy and terminate all financial ties. The insurance company and my attorney will handle the rest. None of them spoke. The sound of espresso machines and quiet conversations filled the void. I felt no triumph, only release. The weight that had pressed on my chest for months lifted as I turned toward the door. Outside, the November air bit at my skin, sharp and clean. Behind me, the cafe windows reflected their figures, still seated, still frozen. Ahead, the sidewalk stretched open and empty, waiting. For the first time in years, I walked forward without looking back. If this story is hitting home, make sure you're subscribed. You need to hear how this ends. 4 months later, the house went dark. The street that used to echo with Dad's weekend lawn mowing and Mom's book club laughter now held only the sound of wind rattling the empty mailbox. The house they'd fought so hard to keep, the one I'd helped maintain for years, now sat vacant with a bank notice taped to the front door. I drove past it once on my way to a client meeting in the suburbs. The sight felt surreal, like looking at a photograph of something that used to matter. Without my payments and with the fraud investigation underway, their financial house of cards collapsed within weeks. The insurance lapsed first, then the mortgage payments started missing deadlines. By February, the foreclosure process began. The neighbors whispered, of course, families like ours weren't supposed to end up on foreclosure lists. We were supposed to be respectable, stable, together. Ava's family from next door told me later that Mom stopped going to book club, too embarrassed to face the questions. Derek moved out first. I heard through a mutual cousin that he'd been staying with friends, couch surfing between apartments. The same guy who posted about family values now had his Instagram set to private. The performance had ended. When the bank's legal team contacted him for a deposition regarding the insurance fraud, he refused to respond. That silence didn't protect him for long. 6 weeks later, the state insurance fraud division filed formal charges against both him and Mom for identity theft and unauthorized use of financial credentials. Rebecca, my attorney, forwarded me the notice without comment. The consequences had finally arrived at their doorstep. Mom found someone new to blame. She called once, long after the house was gone, her voice brittle and thin. You didn't have to destroy us, she said. You could have just helped. I didn't respond. The irony was too thick to wade through. She never mentioned the forged documents, the stolen authorizations, the years of taking without asking. To her, I was still the ungrateful daughter who refused to obey. Dad remained silent, as always. I wondered if he agreed with her or if silence was simply his survival mechanism. Either way, it stopped mattering. The family I'd tried so hard to support had collapsed long before the bank took the house. The first week of March, I signed a lease on a new apartment in Boulder. It was small but filled with natural light, with windows overlooking a quiet park where people walked dogs every morning. I bought new furniture, assembled it myself, and for the first time in years, every single object in that space belonged only to me. No shared accounts, no co-signed anything, no strings attached. There were no overdue notices, no frantic calls, no voices demanding explanations. Just quiet. Each morning I made coffee and watched the sunrise over the mountains. Sometimes I thought about Derek and wondered if he'd learned anything, or if he'd just found someone new to blame. Other times I thought about Mom's garden, how she used to say, nothing good grows in rocky soil. She was wrong. Some of the strongest things grow in the hardest conditions. Boundaries, self-respect, clarity. When the final legal resolution arrived, it confirmed what Rebecca had promised. My name was officially removed from all policies and financial agreements. The liability was reassigned to the original account holders. The judge's notes cited deliberate misrepresentation and unauthorized use of personal credentials. Reading those words, I felt no satisfaction, only completion. It was the clean ending I needed but never thought I'd get. Monica from the insurance company sent a brief email that same day. Case closed. Wishing you all the best moving forward. I replied with 2 words. Thank you. There was nothing else to say. She'd been professional, honest, and kind, qualities that now felt rare when I thought about family. At night, the silence in my apartment grew deep, but never lonely. I learned to appreciate my own company. I cooked meals for one, read books without interruption, and sometimes let music fill the space. The quiet that used to scare me became proof that I'd survived. I stopped waiting for apologies, explanations, or redemption arcs. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. Some just end. And that's okay. One evening, I found an old photo tucked in a box I was unpacking. A family portrait from years ago, all of us standing in front of that house before it became a headline. We looked happy then, maybe because we believed we were. I stared at it for a long moment before slipping it into an envelope and filing it away. The past could stay archived. I had no use for it anymore. Life in Boulder wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I paid my own rent, my own bills, and slept without checking my phone for emergency requests. I no longer measured my worth in how much I could sacrifice. My peace didn't need witnesses, likes, or approval. It only needed space to exist. On my last night before spring fully arrived, I stood by the window and watched the city lights flicker against the darkening sky. This wasn't the life I'd planned when I was younger, but it was the life I chose, the one I built when I finally stopped letting others define my value. And as I turned off the lights and walked toward my quiet bedroom, one thought settled clearly in my mind. Peace was the most expensive thing I ever bought, and it was worth every single cent. If this story resonated with you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment telling me your story, because I know I'm not the only one who's lived through this. Let's build a community where we tell the truth about family, boundaries, and the courage it takes to walk away. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.